What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 24 of the Club and Sub podcast. 25? 124. 124. Wow.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
it's
say
really,
24, man.
yeah, I told you, man, that podcast fucked me up. I'm not going to get into what it was about, but I listened to something before here that really put me in not the best place. But I'm going to be in the best place for this because we have a good card here. We got UFC Vegas 70. I'm pumped to jump into it. I have a bunch of bets on this card. As usual, you got both of us tonight. You got me, John, at MMA Fox, Lags, Danny_Lags on Twitter. Lags, what are your thoughts about this card?
Big theme for me, at least like going up and down on the card, is like just grappling. Whether or not like people choosing the grappling path or whether or not the opponent has the ability to defensively grapple, it just kind of seems like a common theme on this card.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's pretty fun. I have a handful of bets. I have a couple more I'm probably going to make. Maybe we can fucking win some this weekend. That would be nice.
Yeah.
It's been a rough start to the year. I'm not going to lie, but I think it's going to turn around, and I have a couple pretty passionate takes here. So I'm excited to get into it, guys. If you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out. Hopefully, we can reach a few more people this year. But if not, Lags and I are going to keep doing the damn thing here, and hopefully get back to winning some money. So with that, we'll hop back into it here. First fight of the night. Hold on. Wow. I am all over the place. I have the fucking PFL Challenger Series up on Tapology right now.
Damn. Multitasker, though.
First fight of the night. We got Garrett Armfield. He's taking on Jose Johnson. I have a big bet on Armfield here. Got 3 units on him at about minus 150. Price is currently minus 170. I think it should be a decent bit wider than that. The fact of the matter is I don't rate Garrett Armfield like that highly as a prospect, but I think he's probably a UFC level fighter. He's a decent boxer. I think he's a decent wrestler. He's proactive about it. One of the things I do like about Armfield is he's 26 years old and he's training at Killcliff MMA. It's a great camp. We should be expecting to make improvements in every fight. And I kind of think the market is disrespecting his last performance a bit because he was subbed by Onama and he slowed down in that fight. The truth is he was short notice up a weight class there. And so like I like Armfield as a prospect. I think he's decent. And he's taking on Jose Johnson, who honestly, I do not like Jose Johnson. Jose Johnson, someone who I feel like keeps getting away with the same shitty parts of his game and making people pay. And now people are like, oh, well, that's just going to be what happens in perpetuity. The guy's going to get taken down, held down, give up his back, and then maybe find a sub or a knockout. That's really what Jose Johnson does, in my opinion. He's tall, he's long, he hits hard. I give him credit for all of those things, but he doesn't have very good defense. I don't think he's got a very good chin, and he's an absolutely terrible defensive wrestler.
Did we lose John already?
Oh, am I all good?
Good. Yep. You cut out. You cut out for a second. You cut out for a second there on me. Yep.
All right. I think these guys are more or less all. I think they're more or less fought the same level of competition. I do think Armfield is going to be able to take him down. I know he's going to be able to take him down fairly easy. I don't really think Johnson just flopping to his stomach is going to work out too well for him here. But if it does and they get back to the feet, I think Armfield's more durable. I think he's a competent boxer who should be able to hang with him. I mean, ultimately, to me, it's a fight where the minute should be close standing, but I think Armfield's more durable, and I think he's got a big edge on the mat. I kind of think he should be in the minus 230, minus 250 range. What do you think, Legs?
So no play on the fight for me, but I was actually looking to target an under 2.5 rounds, hoping that was opening at a decent price because, kind of what you said on the feet, like I think.
No, keep going. I'm just going to tell my kid not to go near the router.
Gotcha. Yeah, because for me, Jose Johnson on the feet, he is a bit hittable. I think Armfield, if anything, on the feet, decent boxer, good power. And yeah, like you touched on, good. He has a solid wrestling path here. And I think he can find a finish on the mat. And Johnson, long, tall, powerful striker on the feet, I think he could KO Armfield as well. So I think a violence bet is great here, as well as because I think I don't think Armfield's cardio is the greatest, in my opinion.
What price did you get on the under?
Oh, I didn't get a price on the under. That's what I'm saying. I was hoping for a decent price. It opened at minus 175. Yeah.
Where is it now?
I think it's 185.
It sounds about right.
So
yeah, fair enough. Moving on. Curious if you have a take here. I have one, but it's not like super passionate. But we got Haley Cowan taking on Aline Perez. What are your thoughts?
Not a super passionate take, but I would lean more so on the Perez side just because of I think she's a better wrestler, really. Like I think standing here, I think it's mostly a mess, and I think the fight's mostly going to be fought in the clinch. But I think Perez just has more of a chance of having top time, in my opinion, out of the two. So
Yeah, I took a small bet on Perez at like plus 130. I think what's the line now? Are they back down to evens?
it's actually coming in a lot. It's like almost going to flip.
Yeah.
It's plus 100. No.
Honestly, I wouldn't. I don't think there's much value at where the price is now. I'm with you though. I think Perez is pretty bad at MMA, but she is physical. She's relatively strong, and she's very, very aggressive. And she knows what she wants to do, which is get the fight down, which is usually a fairly strong process to have. As opposed to Cowan, who I think is considerably more skilled fighter. She's a better striker. She's certainly the better clinch fighter. But as you mentioned, Cowan just can't get off her back when she gets put down. We've seen it over and over. She gives up position badly. She has terrible IQ on the mat. And while I do worry about the difference in skill level here, everywhere else, Perez was able to hang with Stephanie Egger in the clinch. And like Egger is like a judo black belt with a legit jiu-jitsu black belt. And if she was able to scramble with her, I kind of have to believe she's going to be able to force scrambles here. So yeah, I mean, to me, I think you have to price it, based on what we know of each fighter. I think you have to price it as a competitive fight. And I think what the tipping point for Perez is for me is I do think if either one had a really dominant path here, I think it's more likely to be Perez than Cowan. So small bet for Perez for me. But again, I think the price where it is now is more or less fine. Moving on, no, you have a play here, so we'll stick with you. We got Nurulo Aliev taking on Rafael Alves. What do you think?
Not like a super passionate take, but I like the under 2.5 rounds at minus 110. I have a unit on that. Like Alves to me has always just been like that round one ball of energy. And if he isn't able to pull a ghillie, land a big punch, really, I think he's just minutes wise, he's screwed and his gas tank is horrible. I think Aliev can put him through the grinder. I think he can probably get a late finish here. I know he's nothing special really on the feet. I think he's a bit hittable. It's a lot of like winging overhand shots, but the pace, the pressure, and the grappling, I think that's really going to be like what makes a difference here. So I think pick 'em price. You have both guys' finishing ability in there. I like it.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I in terms of the fight itself, I had a hard time getting a read. My gut is Aliev is probably going to handle him pretty easy. Like if either, again, kind of similar to last fight. I think if either one of these fighters is going to look like very, very dominant in it, it's Aliev. Obviously, the difference here is Aliev's not a dog. He's minus 170. So I do think the market's pricing in enough of the uncertainty in Aliev's game. I don't really like Aliev generally. I don't think he's a very good striker. I think as Just Win Baby, our boy Rich said in the chat, I think by Russian standards, he's a bit weak everywhere. But with that said, he does have a strong process. He will go for takedowns. He's got okay cardio. And on the Alves side, it's like, yeah, Alves, he's probably the better striker. He's probably the better athlete, but he will accept being on his back, and I don't think he's got the best takedown defense. So like when I'm looking at it, it's like, I know Aliev is going to try to wrestle. I know Alves is going to try to jump guillotines here. I don't think he's very likely to catch a ghillie in this fight. I think what's most likely to happen is Aliev just gets on top of him for 10 minutes. Yeah, so I think Aliev should be fine, but again, I'm not really clamoring to play it. Moving on, Joe Selecki, Carl Deaton III. Honestly, I'm not going to bet Deaton because the fight is on relatively short notice. But I think you and I might have chatted about this earlier in the week. And I was like, yeah, you mentioned, I think that Selecki should really handle him here. And I thought I'd agree. And I still do kind of agree. Obviously, he's the more experienced fight. Well, not more experienced in terms of total fights, but he's fought much better competition. He's fought more guys in the UFC. He's obviously a very, very strong jiu-jitsu player, but man, it is so hard for me to watch Joe Selecki with some of these guys who actually can defend takedowns. And then what happens to him when he gets stuck at distance, like he's really, really, really a very wooden fighter. And as such, it's like, I kind of feel like if Deaton can keep the fight standing, he's live here. Like I think most guys in the UFC are live against Joe Selecki on the feet. But with that said, it's like, do I really want to take a debutant taking this kind of a jump up in competition? Not really. Selecki should be fine, but I don't know. I wouldn't be totally shocked if Deaton made this fight more competitive than the line suggests. What do you think, Likes?
Yeah, to me, watching Deaton's tape, like the Jonas Flock fight was really one where just he gets absolutely dumpstered, really, for the most part. And yeah, I just don't think he's a great defensive wrestler at all. So I think Selecki, again, minds his P's and Q's on the feet, takes his fight to the ground. I think he should be able to finish him quite easily.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets it down, he's going to carve through him. Obviously, Selecki's very good in top
and again,
position.
Obviously, Selecki's not a guy you want to be laying like 6-1.
Yeah.
5-1, 6-1. So like I think his inside the distance is -105 if you're looking for stuff like that. But yeah, not a fight I'm clamoring to play.
I know you played this next one, though, so I'll start with you here. We got Osborne. He's taking on Energy. Charles Johnson. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, I'm still surprised by the line movement. It's coming in a bit. It looks like I'm bet online. He's -148, the lowest. I played him -155. I think Johnson's honestly like just a solid archetype to beat O'Day. Like solid pressure fighter, good output, good cardio, good durability. So I don't know. I'm a bit miffed by all the line movement, quite frankly. So yeah.
Yeah, I leaned the other way at some of the earlier numbers up when Charles was priced near -200 on the O'Day side. I didn't end up betting him. The thing is, it's kind of a weird fight because it's like it's very easy to imagine where O'Day can have success here. I do think he can have some success with his counters. He's obviously got more length than most of the guys that Charles has fought, and he's a better athlete than most of the guys Charles has fought. But at the same time, like you watch O'Day's career, and it's like, I mean, if he doesn't KO Charles, like, do I really trust him to ever win minutes here? Like, yeah, he could edge them on moments, but Charles has much better output. He's got better cardio. Frankly, I think O'Day is a lot more reliant, I should say, on his height and his length than Charles is. There is size parity here, but Charles's game translates pretty well to whether he's got a size advantage or not. Whereas O'Day kind of given his lack of head movement and lack of defense, he kind of needs to be able to hang back at range. And so I actually think the size parity factor favors Johnson. The output favors Johnson. And like, even though I expect the early minutes of his fight to be competitive, and I do think they'll be competitive. I think anybody that thinks Johnson walks through him while they're fresh is just, not thinking about this fight the right way. But with that said, let's say you have a competitive first 7 minutes. We do know Johnson's cardio and his output are going to stay high and he's going to pick up the pace. Whereas we know on the other side, if O'Day is to match Charles's pace, his output and his cardio is going to deteriorate down the course of the fight. So it's like, how do you price 7 minutes of 50% versus 8 minutes on the back end? That's really like 75, 80%, 20%. So when thinking about it from that context, I think the price in Johnson's fine. You can maybe even make an argument there's some value. But I do understand the shots at O'Day. I just kind of think he kind of needs a perfect fight to win, if that makes sense. Moving on, we got, I love this fight. We got Jordan Levitt. He's taking on Victor Martinez.
Fight that you got a big play on.
I do have a big play on it. I've been adding up to Victor Martinez all week. I have 3 units on him so far, 2 at +110, 1 at -105. I'm honestly thinking of even adding more. The thing is, Martinez isn't normally the kind of fighter I make big wagers on. If I'm going to make a very big wager, I want to be betting someone I think can dominate in the grappling. And that's obviously not the case in this fight. But the more I think about the fight, the more I just think Levitt's really up against it here. The common refrain, I think, this week when you see people breaking down this fight is that Victor Martinez, he's been taken down a bunch regionally. He gives his back up. Therefore, Jiu-Jitsu Jordan Levitt is going to take him down and take his back. The thing is, go watch every single one of Jordan Levitt's fights. If you can find one instance, one, of this man putting in hooks for a back take, please send it to me, because I did a really deep dive and I couldn't. Paddy Pimblett gave his guys back 4 times. We've seen multiple other guys give up their backs to Levitt. And what does he do? He wrestle rides you. He tries to wrestle ride you and basically jump into a guillotine on them. I don't think he's taking Victor Martinez's back. I feel pretty strongly about it. But let's just say in the event he does take his back, Victor's a black belt. He spent this entire camp training with Carlos Diego Ferreira. I do not think a Levitt sub here is very, very likely at all. And so it's like, if he doesn't sub him, well, can he control him with his back flat on the mat? I don't think so. I'm very certain he can't, to be honest. And so you're basically talking about Levitt either needing a sub or be able to grind him out against the cage for 15 minutes. Well, Levitt's got bad cardio. And on the feet, Victor Martinez is not Trey Ogden, man. Trey Ogden completely cucked in that fight so hard, it's unbelievable. Jordan Levitt at range has never landed double-digit head strikes in his career. Did you know that? In his entire UFC career, has not landed double-digit head strikes in a fight. And so I look at this, I think the gap on the feet is like if they stood at distance for 15 minutes, I think Martinez is like minus 600 here. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But given the fact that I don't think Levitt can hold it down and I don't think he's likely to get a back take, I think Martinez has to be a big favorite. I think he should be out in the minus 200 to 250 range. I know that's crazy, and I don't usually like fading experienced UFC fighters, but if you actually look at their level of competition, it's actually very, very similar. Like, I'm not sure Jacob Rosales is worse than any of the guys that Jordan Levitt has fought in the UFC, other than, like, I don't know, maybe Patty. So I love Victor here. I think he's going to absolutely rip through Levitt. What do you think, Lags?
Well, it's a good thing you started off because I don't have a passionate take on this one for sure. Because to me, I kind of just think, honestly, like what you said in the beginning, because to me, a lot on the tape here, Victor Martinez, it's very easy to take this guy down. He gives his back up, trying to get up. And Levitt's just a weasel, man. Like, I know you mentioned it with the head strikes and everything. This guy's a weasel. Finds a way to win, finds a way to get solid takedowns. And I don't know. To me, I just don't have a solid read on it. But I think that Levitt's going to have his opportunities to find a sub. So.
Do you think so, though? Like, where do you think he's going to have those opportunities?
I just think, I think Victor's just easy to take down. That I know it's a basic and easy thing to say. I get it, but.
All right. Fair enough. I think Victor's going to absolutely cut through him here, to be honest. I really do.
I don't have anything on the fight.
Moving on, we got a interesting fight. Gabriela Fernandez, she's making her UFC debut. She's taking on Jazudavicius. What do you think, your legs?
I guess you could somewhat compare it a little bit to the last fight in the sense that, like, I don't think Jasmine's a great wrestler. And I guess maybe you could say, like, oh, why aren't you betting Victor Martinez, Lags? But no, where I'm looking at in this fight, it's like, I don't think Jasmine's a great wrestler. So obviously Fernandez, her big hole is once she gets put on her back, I mean, it's closed guard. It's pretty much a full round. But like I mentioned, I don't think Jasmine's the greater wrestler. So for me, it's a pass.
I am considering betting Jasmine here, to be honest.
Yeah. Interesting. So you're flip-flopping here.
Well, I have a lot more conviction about, Victor's ability to get off his back than I do about
that's also fair.
Gabriela Fernandez. The thing is, Fernandez is being kind of touted as an elite striker. And to be fair to her, her striking does look quite good, but I don't know. I mean, she hasn't exactly faced a murderer's row of strikers. She hasn't really faced much resistance at all. A bit in her last LFA fight, and she looked good. But I think there's the market's kind of drawing a correlation between Gabriela Fernandez and Natalia Silva. And I just don't think it's warranted. Yes, they're both Brazilians who kick. The difference is Natalia Silva looks like she's a legitimately elite prospect, and nothing about Fernandez's game to me seems elite. She's a good kicker. I give her that. But is she a good boxer? I don't know. Is she a better striker than Jasmine? Probably. But while I agree with you, I don't think Jasmine's a very good wrestler. I feel not high conviction, but I feel like Gabriella is probably not a good defensive wrestler. Not many women have attempted takedowns against her, and it's possible she improved. But the few who have, her hips have not looked great. She doesn't look like she defends them great. And as you said, she gets held down for a round. And so when you're thinking about the fight, it's like, if you tell me Jasmine lands 2 takedowns, I think she's got to be minus 150. If you're projecting her to land 3 to 4 or more takedowns, she's got to be a good size favorite. And so to me, the only way I can get to Gabriella favorite is if I'm projecting Jasmine to land 1 or less takedowns. And maybe that is the case. Maybe her defensive wrestling is that good, but based on what's available, I think it's hard to price that into this, because what's available says that's not the case. You could price in potential improvement, but I don't think you could price in bad defensive wrestler to good defensive wrestler. That's a big jump. So I lean Jasmine here. I'm probably going to bet her. I'm still waiting on the line, but it's about plus 110 right now. Moving on, we got Eric Gonzalez taking on Trevor Peak. It's another one where I feel like I might just pass because Eric Gonzalez is really, really not good at MMA. But Trevor Peek is also really, really not good at MMA. The only difference between the two of them is I feel like Peek is more aggro and more aggressive than Gonzalez is. Probably hits a bit harder as well, or definitely hits a bit harder.
I was just going to add that. I was just going to add he probably hits a bit harder, but I'm glad you added that.
Yeah. So it's like I do understand the feeling that Peek will knock him out, and it feels like it's a reasonably likely outcome. Although I do think it's worth considering the fact that Gonzalez had never been knocked out prior to the Miller fight. It's like, is Trevor Peek Jim Miller? I mean, he might hit as hard, but I don't think he's as sharp a striker as Miller is by any means. But I just don't rate anything about Peek's game. I think he's absolutely awful. It's very weird to see, even against an Eric Gonzalez, for me to see Trevor Peek at -200. I think it's going to be a slop show. I'd almost rather try to bet Gonzalez live, and see, because like Peek's cardio did not look great on Contenders. But if it keeps going, if it gets to +200, it's going to be a slugfest, and I'll probably take Trevor Peek in a slug shot, or not Trevor Peek, sorry, Eric Gonzalez, if it's going to be a slugfest at +200. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a slugfest, and honestly, for me, I the under 2.5. I know it's chalked up to hell -350, but I think it's a great parlay piece. I expect violence here from the start. These guys, like you mentioned, both of them are super hittable. Obviously, on the Peek side, though, hits much harder, more aggro, but like, I don't know. To me, Gonzalez, the durability is just not there. Like for a guy like Peek, if he just comes for him, I think Peek just finishes him early. So I think the under 1.5, even the under 1.5, I think at -180, I think it's great, but I'm just playing it a little bit safer.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on, we got an interesting fight here, though. Mike Malott, Johan Lannis, two Canadians going at it. Canadian on Canadian crime. What do you think?
And to close out the violence parlay here, just waiting on the DraftKings lines here, would be the under 2.5 here in this fight. I don't see how this fight gets extended either, because to me, Lannis kind of tried to overcorrect his cardio issues in the last fight, and you kind of see where it was just really a bog of a fight, really didn't land much at all. And then so like Lioness to me is like that round one puncher. He's got to get you out of there early, or else, I mean, the cardio is just horrific. I mean, absolutely atrocious. But then on the Malott side, it's just more of a question mark, really. We don't really know what it looks like, because there's only one fight where it's extended outside of the first round. So I think if Malott goes to the grappling edge, I think he could sub Linus probably pretty easily. I think there's a big grappling edge. But on the feet, I think you can finish him as well. So the under 2.5 at -250, along with that, I think it's a great parlay spot.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't have really a strong opinion on this fight. I still don't really even know what Mike Malott is. Like, he's got so little available data on his game, and it's like the Gall fight. His striking looked good in it, but I mean, he outstruck Mickey Gall. Like, why do I care? And I know there are some people who rate his game quite highly, but I just haven't seen enough to really feel passionate about his game one way or another. On the Lannis side, I'm with you. Like, he overcorrected last fight. I don't expect him to here, because I kind of think with Lannis, he was very lucky that Darian Weeks fucked off just as hard as he did in that fight, and was probably lucky to get the decision anyway, if we're being honest. I was on Darian Weeks, so it was quite unfortunate. But I don't think he can afford to do that here. I think if he kind of gives Malott space and just fights low tempo, Mallott's going to probably pace him on minutes without much of an issue. Mallott's probably the more skilled fighter. That's my gut. At any rate, like, I'm not really tempted by a side. I would definitely not lay -200 with Mike Malott. And I was tempted to take a poke on Lannis just because of the power, but it's also like, if you bet Lannis, you're banking on either a round one knockout or Malott just fucking off with him down the stretch here and it being a slop show. And it's just not, I don't know. It's not something I'm trying to stand in front of. I think the line it's probably bang on here. Moving on. Fight's a joke. We got Tatiana Suarez, Montana De La Rosa. I don't know. Look, would I lay Montana or Tatiana? No. I mean, she's off a 3-year hiatus, up a weight class, off a serious neck injury. But with that said, I mean, she should have zero issues. Like, if Tatiana Suarez has come back from this injury healthy, in my opinion, she's very likely the best fighter in this division by a decent margin. I think the entire question of this fight comes down to the uncertainty behind the injury, but I'm expecting her to be fine. I think she smashes through De La Rosa. Maybe you could take the over. You know, Montana doesn't really get finished. She's positionally sound, but I'm not really interested in it. What about you?
Yeah, literally echo the similar thoughts as well. Like, I think you could get cute here and go with the overs just because, like, the long hiatus, De La Rosa historically pretty durable, but like at the same side, like we also haven't kind of seen this kind of matchup with De La Rosa in the past with like strong wrestler grappler on top. So
Yeah, I agree.
interesting. It's just an interesting dynamic. It's a pass for me, but yeah, Suarez should be fine.
Yeah, moving on. We got Augusto Sakai. He's taking on Dante Mays. Any thoughts here?
I thought you were going to start this one off, honestly, because I know you have a pretty passionate.
You want me to?
Yeah,
I'll start it off if you want me to.
Yeah, go for it.
I bet Mays here. I have a couple units on him across like mine. It's funny. I bet it -110, and sure enough, like 3 hours later, he was a dog. Not how I thought it was going to go.
It's not a bad thing, John. Sometimes the negative CLV works out.
It is true. It is. CLV has not been working out in anyone's favor lately. So not the end of the world here. I added to him at dog. I'm not like max betting Dante Mays. I'm not like super passionate, but like you look at Augusto Sakai, and on paper, it's like, well, this is a decent step up in competition for Mays, right? But like actually go back through Sakai's career. He's had one of the weirdest careers to date. Lost the first round to Chase Sherman, was getting lit up in that fight. Sherman gassed out. Flat out robbed Andrei Arlovski, maybe like the worst robbery in UFC history. Marcin Tybura knocked him out in 59 seconds. Maybe the most hilarious hindsight outcome of the last like decade. I think that would probably be Tybura -400 if you relined it now with the data available on both guys. The Ivanov fight, close split that he would have lost if he didn't grab the cage. Like just a very, very weird fluky run. And then you go into the rest of his fights. Overeem fight. Overeem attempted 68 distance strikes that fight. Everybody's like, oh, he had a close fight with Alistair Overeem. And it's like, well, Overeem shelled up against the fence for 2.5 rounds. Halfway through round 3, realized he was allowed to grapple and proceeded to maul him for the next 3 rounds till he finished him. Next fight, Jairzinho Rosenstreich. Terrified to engage, gets knocked out. Tuivasa looks awful, gets knocked out. Last fight, Sergey Spivak gets absolutely mauled and finished. Like, I don't know. Sakai is probably a decent heavyweight, but the reality is he was never as good as his ranking. This is not some guy who could ever meaningfully compete with the top 5 in the division. He's a decent volume striker. He doesn't hit very hard, and he's an absolutely horrendous grappler. That's just beyond dispute at this point. And on the Mays side, it's like, yeah, Dontel Mays. We all bet him against Hamdi. That was fucking awful. You didn't?
But it's okay.
All right.
I didn't. It's so sorry.
I'm sorry. That's what you do when everybody else is on a side. Abandon ship. It never works out well. And I don't think Dontel Mays is very good. Like but he's huge. He's 6'6". He's got a big reach advantage here. He's a good athlete. He's pretty fast. His striking is janky as fuck, and I absolutely hate it. And yeah, I mean, if they stay on the feet, it's possible Sakai win. It's probably a close fight. Honestly, Sakai's probably a bit more volume reliant and maybe a bit more technical, but I also think he's going to have trouble dealing with Mays' height and his length. I think Mays probably has more KO upside standing. And so I'd expect competitive minutes there. What really kind of swings me to the Mays side is it's like, you go rewatch I know he hasn't grappled in any other fight in his career really outside of the Parisian fight, but like, I kind of think that lacks context. You look at the rest of his UFC fights and it's Cyril Gane, Rodrigo Nascimento. Both of those guys are great grapplers. Hamdi, didn't really have to grapple much against Roki, but got him down pretty easy when he wanted to. And so I look at it and I rewatch the Parisian fight. I actually think Mays is pretty decent positionally for a heavyweight, like very good for a heavyweight that way. Obviously his cardio held up with that game plan. And so I think that's on the I think him coming out here and doing exactly what he did to Parisian is very much on the table. Now, do I trust him to not be a fucking idiot and actually fight to the game plan? No, it's Dontel Mays. Of course I don't trust him. But at the same time, it's like, we have a close competitive match here. Neither guy has great cardio, and one guy potentially could look -400 if he fights exactly how he fought two fights ago. To me, that does not equate to an underdog in an even money fight. Like, I feel like Mays has to be just based on, like, I can't imagine many permutations of this where we say Sakai looked like he was -300, whereas I can imagine
a quick knockout.
Right, exactly. Like if it goes the distance, it's probably a competitive fight if they're standing. Whereas it's very easy to imagine hindsight being like, wow, Mays absolutely clowned him. That was very easy. And so like with that dynamic, I feel like I have to bet Mays here. What do you think?
Yeah, to me, I think it comes down to whether or not Mays goes out there and shoots takedowns. Because to me, I'm more so along the lines of like 60-40 on the feet for Sakai. Because like you said, I do think the output on the feet I think the power on the feet, not to mention like the optics, like Dontel's like reactions to shots when he's getting hit and kind of like the running away like he did a little bit in the Hamby fight, like not the greatest, but again, like I think it just comes down to whether or not May shoots takedowns or not, because I mean, I bet Spivak huge. We all did in his last fight because Spivak is a good offensive grappler and he will go to it. So, yep.
Yeah, fair enough.
I wish you luck, John.
Thank you. Hopefully Dontel doesn't disappoint me 2 times in a row. That would be really unfortunate.
And BHM, you know.
Moving on, we got Andre Muniz taking on Brendan Allen. 2 of my least favorites on the roster historically. What do you think here?
That's what's kind of the weird thing to me with this fight. It's like I am not a Muniz guy at all, and seeing him this big of a favorite's like just kind of queasy to me. But like Brendan Allen is just so wrestleable, and I think he can be controlled here by Andre Muniz. But like at the same time, I just don't. I don't think Andre Muniz's cardio is that great. So like if Brandon Allen can somehow extend him, reverse him for any instance, I think Allen is live. But I don't like the IQ of Brendan Allen. I think Muniz can probably submit him on the mat. Yeah, I think it's a good fight for him.
Yeah, I'm very torn because like I really want to bet Brendan Allen. Like obviously I've been trying to fade Andre Muniz for literally years at this point, and just like lighting
That's
money
how I am
on
with
fire
Allen
doing
too.
it. Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too.
John Strickland was great. Yeah,
but like I look at the fight, and like there's a cardio edge on the Allen side, you know, like unquestionably. My issue is, I think while Allen has been able to initiate scrambles with a lot of other fighters, I'm not sure he's going to be able to here. You know, when you rewatch his fight with who the fuck's the Australian guy, Whitaker's jiu-jitsu guy?
Malkoon.
You rewatch that fight. Malkoon was able to control him relatively easily for long chunks of that fight. You know, him initiating a bunch of scrambles with, you know, the Kyle Dawkises of the world, I don't think is necessarily indicative of how he'll do against the jiu-jitsu ace like Muniz. I do worry on the Muniz side that Muniz might just be too hungry to hunt the armbar. And if that is the case and he falls off, well, then this turns into a competitive fight. But I also think Muniz is fully capable, though, of just grappling him and controlling him on the mat. You know, we saw him do it a fight ago. I think if Muniz actually decided he just wants to take the dominant positions that Allen decides to give him when he looks to initiate scrambles, he's going to be just fine and probably look his number. But like, I mean, you could never bet Muniz here. I can only bet Allen. I think for me, though, I kind of want to see how it plays out. Like if Muniz is kind of just happy to take what Allen gives him early, I'm not going to have any interest in entering into the fight. Whereas, you know, if Allen can actually cause some problems scrambling, I'm happy to enter live, you know, even if it's close. Because I do think Allen will have more down the stretch. I just, your point, I think Allen's way too grappleable, and I think Muniz is a different level than anything he's really had to deal with in the UFC. You know, last time he had to deal with someone like this, and I shouldn't even say like this because they're not even at all similar grapplers, but if you go back to Allen's time in LFA, you know, Fluffy Hernandez absolutely dumpstered him, like with ease, you know, just grappling him aggressively. Obviously, Muniz is not like Fluffy, but with how easy guys like Fluffy and Dawkins have been able to get to dominant positions, I don't think Muniz is going to have that hard a time doing it. So, yeah, I'm happy to see it.
I will say this, though. I think the over's a little interesting, but it's just like one of those blood pressure overs.
It's a big plus money,
over
right?
1.5. No, the other 1.5.
1.5?
1.5's minus 130.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Minus 135.
You had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. That is,
but big plus monies that I know you would probably chase. I see the goes the distance on FanDuel's plus 225.
I actually don't hate that. I actually like that a decent amount, to be honest. I told you I hadn't looked at totals too much in this card yet.
But yeah, over 1.5 minus 130.
I kind of think that, like, I'd be a little surprised if Allen got insta subbed here, and I'd also be kind of surprised if Allen's able to keep the fight at range in the first 5 to 8 minutes or so. That seems a bit out there. I might take a swing at that. That's kind of interesting.
Hey,
moving on though.
You're the money line guy here. I'm the props, the total guy. You know.
Well, if you're co-signing it over here, we might have to do it.
Oh no! I thought you were talking about this. I thought you were talking about the main event.
No.
Oh hell no!
All right, we got Nikita Krylov. We got Ryan Spann. Crazy fight. Krylov currently going off is minus 170. I guess he's the side. Yeah, it's kind of a weird fight because I was like 100% certain I was going to bet Krylov big when I went to tape this, and he's just had so many sweaty moments early in fights that make me like, I can way too easily envision, like just rewatching the Volkan fight, I can way too easily envision Spann bonking him early here. And maybe I need to get that out of my head and think more process than outcomes. But I can't, I do not think early in this fight he will have an easy time holding Spann down if he grapples hard. I think Spann should be able to work up early. Plus, Krylov seems like a guy who's very good guillotinable, and we know Spann loves that technique. And so I kind of think Spann's going to be able to have some opportunities to hurt and or finish Krylov in the early portion of this fight. With that said, I think if you're trying to put a number on who wins the fight, I do think Spann's upside is pretty limited to the early portion of this fight. Like if Krylov can push a pace on him and survive early, he's going to just take over the fight, dumpster him, and eventually finish. I think that's very, very likely. And so with that in mind, you know, Krylov's grappled much better grapplers than Ryan Spann. So I do think he should be like minus 200 here, just because Spann is gassy and probably doesn't have more than 7 minutes here. And Krylov, even though he is finishable, is a tough bastard. So it's like, can I really put Spann getting him out of there in the first couple rounds past like 25%? That seems extreme. And if that's the dynamic, you know, you almost have to, like if a fight extends, you kind of have to think Krylov's a huge favorite. But with that said, I think Spann provides enough chaos that I don't really want to fish early. Like I'd rather enter Krylov minus 250 after round one than I would minus 170 pre, you know, or him getting wobbled bad in round one, you know, and bet him live as a dog.
Or I say, give you a little another angle here, or you could just take Krylov ITD at evens.
Is it evens?
Yeah.
But I guess this is like, I mean, that's not bad.
I mean, if this goes 25, Spann's having a heart attack.
I would be shocked if this goes 20. I mean, what is this to end inside the distance? Minus 700?
Actually,
yeah,
literally. Funny enough, it's 11-1 on FanDuel.
I don't even like necessarily disagree with that because Krylov is eventually going to get him in a dominant position.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like the same thing though. It's like I feel like the most danger any bet on Krylov is going to face early here will be very early in this fight. I don't have to have money on it, you know.
That's fair.
Even though I want to be on Krylov, I'd much rather to see how it plays out. Or even maybe Spann drops him twice early and you get him as a dog after a round. That wouldn't be bad. What do you think? What's your view on the fight?
No, I'm kind of with you as well. Like the chaos Spann brings, because I was on Krylov against Craig. Like Krylov just puts himself just in horrible positions, both in grappling and in the stand-up. Like I know a lot of people say, like, I get it, like he has decent cardio, but I don't think, like, to me, it's just more of like a working through the gas. And I would say he's gas, for instance, but like I think he just slows a bit and he's just able to work through it. Whereas like Spann's fast, athletic, powerful, can definitely knock him out early, but like you said, Spann's tank is like a round and a half, maybe. So I think as soon as Krylov gets him down, gets in dominant positions, I think he can finish it. So I think Krylov, like round 2, round 3, I think that's probably the best way to look at it.
Yeah, I don't think that's bad. But yeah, I'm more or less with you. I mean, I think Krylov legit can compete with guys in the top 5. Whereas I think Krylov could make a real run. Whereas I just don't see that from Ryan Spann. Like, I think eventually he just kind of runs up against it, just skill-wise. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun one. I think this whole main card should be pretty fun. So I'm excited for it. Anything you want to shout out before we hop off here?
Well, I guess last thing, I was just looking at it real quick here. It looks like there's a big disparity on the fight doesn't start round 3 on the main event. So minus 190 on DraftKings. Then you have like minus 250 on Dimes and FanDuel. So I think minus 190.
It doesn't
start round 3. Not a horrible. I don't know. I don't think it's a horrible price, but yeah.
I mean, but you have to keep in mind Nikita Krylov went 15 minutes with Johnny Walker. You know,
he did.
He did. So I don't know that's what I want to get involved in.
Spann unders for me have just been money. I have no play on the fight, but like I was on it against Smith as well. Smith, Walker. Yeah.
Boone wants to know, do we have a Jake Paul prediction here? Do you have a Jake Paul prediction?
I think Jake Paul money line like minus 165, 70 is pretty good. I know our boy C thinks the fight's a little rigged or whatever, this or that. I like Jake Paul, honestly. I think he's a decent boxer, and I don't think much of Fury. I don't know.
Yeah, I more or less agree. I think I think it's a good spot for Paul. I'm going to probably play
Yeah.
it, which means since I'm not fading Jake Paul for the first time, it means I'm sure he'll get knocked out by Tommy Fury. Like I've
Or robbed in a decision.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens though. I mean, that should be exciting. Yeah.
Oh, and then
I mean, that's all I got.
Last thing to shout out. So next week we're going to be running that contest again because you guys are slacking here. We don't have a winner yet. The $50 contest, pay-per-view contest.
We'll up the price to $100 next week.
Yes, sir.
If someone gets it next week, it's $100.
Yep. Return to the GOAT.
Put the details out for that.
Yep.
And,
yep.
Yeah.
I will.
And we'll probably have a guest next week since it's a pay-per-view. So we will keep you updated on that. Yeah, guys.
Oh, and then John, do you have any Bellator action you want to give out to the people?
I mean, I bet Jeremy Kennedy at -170 pretty big, but I think he's like -230 now. I don't really want to.
Oh, maybe it's an update yet. I see -170 still on DraftKings.
No shit. Yeah, that's the only play. I would take that. If you have DraftKings and Jeremy Kennedy -170,
I will let you know right now. Yeah.
I made him about -250. I think he should be fine here.
Oh, I think Best Fight Odds just did an update. It's -225 on DraftKings. Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes a lot more sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I got for the weekend. Guys, good luck on your bets this weekend. If hopefully you're with us, if you're fading us, I guess good luck. We'll be back.
But thanks for tuning in.
Same time. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back at the same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. Like the show, drop a like and subscribe. As always, you can find Lags at Twitter at Danny_Lags, me at MMA Fox. Ever want to talk fights, have questions, feel free to hit us up. We love chatting. Take it easy, everybody. Good luck.